There's been some discussion previously about shock tactics in advertising, which has, with extensive research, been known to improve the memorability of an ad. But the question that's been stated before is it an ethical decision as a charity to deliberately shock? I'll be looking at this further and the visuals and format of the three charity advertisements you have just watched. So Comic Relief follows a traditional format of getting the audience to donate. In this advert, Peter Capaldi directly looks us in the eye with his emotional sermon. A little cliched as he speaks about time being, as we know him, the Doctor who freely travels this third dimension. This brings us to the idea of the role of celebrity, which Hannah will discuss further. It is interesting to question, though, their role, as the appearance of Peter Capaldi brings no value to those who are on the ground in that hospital in terms of his status as a British actor. His role is solely for those who are to donate. I think I'd prefer to pay for doctors to be sent out instead of Lenny Henry and his army of TV personalities. Then this leads perfectly to the idea of television dumbing down the audience. Here is a quote of Adorno Theodore from his chapter on television from his book Culture Industry. People may not only lose true insight into reality, but ultimately their very capacity for life experience may be dulled by the constant wearing of blue and pink spectacles. This idea could easily be related to Comic Relief with the negative imagery they constantly use. The advert you have watched contains typical images of children, sick, pain, suffering, tears, very emotive imagery. The fact I said they were typical, does that mean I'm heartless or just being dulled by this repetitive format? To some extent, we are becoming desensitized, and these emotive images actually no longer shock. The result of this is that we become tired and lose interest. AIS in London state you lose sympathy if you cry wolf too often. Yet Comic Relief raised £1,047,083,706 in 2015, with £78,082,988 being raised on the night of Red Nose Day. Then perhaps this dumbing down of the culture works. But when donating, it is important to question and not take face value. Because when you look at the imagery in Comic Relief, there are several undertones which can be explored. The imagery constantly used can allow a mistaken view of Africa. By dumbing down the audience, they have captured an impression that is riddled with poverty and sick children which need saving by this Western saviour. A saviour that Peter Capaldi tells is us. The role of the celebrity in that hospital does also back up this idea of a Western saviour. You could interpret it as an ignorance from another culture, this idea that a Western capitalist culture is the most secure, safe and idyllic. These are big claims, but it is important to question the effect of the imagery we see and the imagery we create as visual artists. The ethics question is it ethical to contribute to a dumbing down of society? When we turn to the ethics of the British Red Cross, we see an attempt to eradicate this sense of other and bring a unity to all crises. A particularly strong tactic by portraying them as an ethical organisation, a question which is continuously in the media and obviously being discussed now. Maria made reference to the bloody handprints as a shock tactic, but I'd have to disagree. I believe they have been filmed in such a way that it does not linger on pain and suffering and exploit that shock. The rhymes and rhythm and positive imagery, along with those more negative images, create a sense of upliftment and empowerment. An ethical appearance, yet they hassle and hound you on the street, asking you for your card details. Again, questions to be raised. When looking at the Meningitis Now advert, they have used shock along with this sickening motion of the camera to produce a rather disturbing ad. It is effective as they have used shock in an engaging way. After all, shock does and always will communicate and make ads more memorable. Charities will always use shock tactics as it increases awareness. What has to be understood is that it is not used in a dumbing way, but in a sophisticated manner that people do not get fed up of or believe it has gone too far.